Well, good morning, everybody. I'm in the company of two esteemed Grandmasters this morning. Grandmaster Nigel Davies, grinning like a Cheshire cat, and Grandmaster Danny Gormally, who is returning to the show after a wonderful success last time, where he got the highest rankings of all by quite some margin. I know Keith Arkle is hideously jealous of this, so perhaps we'll have Arkle back very soon to see if he can catch Danny up.
Keith
right,
was
well,
in second place, by the way.
Who, Keith?
Keith is like the second most popular British GM on our show.
He won't like that. He won't like that.
It is interesting to see how, when we don't have a guest, our ratings tumble, you know. So that might say something about us. Anyway, welcome, Dan. Welcome along. And let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing since the last time you were on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, guys. Yeah, I played the British Chess Championships. Very interesting. One of the things that I got to, I love whinging. And one of the things I love to whinge about is the cost of everything, how expensive everything is now. So what I did actually we're just talking about Keith. I saw that Keith was playing a lot of the side events. And I thought, God, he's going to put up all these statuses about how he's won all these like Blitz events. Right, I'm not having that. So I thought I'd play the rapid play before the British and try and beat him in that tournament because I thought this is a good way to warm up for the main event. So I went down on the Tuesday and the train was from Almouth Station to Torquay, return was £251.
Wow.
Which is just like mind-blowing. So it's getting to the point now, Andy, where you won't be able to afford to play chess tournaments, or you won't be able to afford to even travel to chess tournaments, let alone make a profit from them. So yeah, I went down there. I played in the British. It's obviously a very enjoyable event, a very nice part of the world. I did fairly well. I was pretty happy with my performance. There were a couple of bad losses in there. For example, I lost to John Ems in 12 moves, which is the quickest game I've ever lost. But at the same time, it was just a bad opening that I went into. I lost to Harry Grieve, who won the tournament. And there's a couple of things I would say about Harry Grieve winning the British, actually, and a couple of reasons why I think he won it. Well, first, he's obviously a good player. He's underrated, no question. But the other reason I would say is it's very, very hard for like older players, or I should say, players like myself and Nigel, to break through and win the British for the first time. Because all the time I've been playing the British, the oldest player to have won the British is, I believe, Stuart Conquest, who was 40 years of age when he won it in 2008.
Fazekas was a lot older.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about in modern times. I'm talking about in modern times,
Me.
Who's this? Sorry, Fazekas?
Fazekas. He was a Hungarian immigrant, and he won the British Championship, and then he was upset that he wasn't picked for the England team. Right? he thought it was racism against Hungarians.
I could tell a funny story against Fazekas because he used to play for Essex, but I won't at this point because it will cause an uproar. But never mind, carry on.
Yeah,
no. You've got to say it now.
No, carry on. It involves his false teeth.
Right, okay. He must have been quite old then, yeah. Must have been
and taking
old.
them out during a game. Never mind, carry on.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I can imagine.
A statute
against Danny already. It's for Danny.
I think very, very poor dentistry that British chess players tend to have because of a lack of interest in their sort of self-regard. But yeah, I mean,
I will tell the story because it's quite amusing.
Yeah.
There was a guy who used to play for East Ham Chess Club, which was my original club, and they used to have this thing called the Battle of Britain tournament, where people went round to other people's houses to play the games. I mean, this was back in the 1960s or something like that. And the guy who I'm referring to quickly got a one position against Fazekas. And Fazekas then proceeded to fill up a glass with water by the side of the board. He'd been eating before the guy arrived, so he'd been eating a bread roll or something like that. Then he took his false teeth out during the game and put them in the jar by the side of the board. And this guy told me, he said, my gaze was inexorably drawn to the false teeth. I couldn't actually play chess after that. I couldn't look at the board. I was just looking at these false teeth with all this bread coming off.
And that was Bazika's false teeth.
Yeah, and after that, he lost like a child. I think he had some argument with Penrose, didn't he, about who would be board one for Essex or something. Maybe that was Klein. But anyway, these guys are steeped in history. Over to you, Danny. Sorry about that.
No. It's interesting. Yeah, because it's interesting hearing about the history. Because to be honest with you, the first time I played the British was 1996.
I mean, it gives you a few tips of how to win the British in the future, surely.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's without, and people like Keith. Keith was leading with 4.5 out of 5, and I actually thought he had a big advantage at that point because he'd already got to +5, so in theory he could get to 7. Sorry, he's already on +4, but in theory one more win would get him to 7, and that would, 7. You're thinking about a playoff.
I must admit, I thought he was going to win it. I thought Keith was going to win it,
Yeah. At that point, he's looking very strong because I think the other thing's worth mentioning, Andy, is that because they changed the format of the British, it's now effectively a sprint. If you don't start well, you're in trouble, because it's only 9 rounds. So if you get to round 5 and say you're on 3 out of 5, you're effectively in trouble because you don't have enough rounds to come back. Whereas before it was 11 rounds, it gives you a little bit more leeway. But yeah, so I think one of the reasons why Harry Greave was able to win the British is because he's a young player and therefore he doesn't have the sort of scar tissue that maybe some of the older players have built up over the years in terms of, I think the older you get, the harder it is to break through because the British is a very, in a way, it's a very nerve-wracking event because there's so much at stake. You're going to get your name in the record books. I certainly, when I played Brandon in round 5, Brandon Clark, who's obviously a very good young player. It was in round 4, actually. I was on 3 out of 3. And when I played Brandon, I was very nervous before that game. And I was so nervous. So normally what I would do is I'd leave the hotel about 11:30. So my hotel was like right at the top of the hill. So the cleaner would come round. And by that point, I've done enough preparation. I'm like sick of preparing. So I'm like, right, I want to leave the hotel anyway. I didn't normally have breakfast in the hotel. So I'd go down to town. I'd get some breakfast in town. But then I'd have like so much time to kill before the game. I'd like have 2 hours still to kill before the game, which is too much. So I'm wandering around town aimlessly. And I remember sitting in a bench by a duck pond just before the game, and I was so nervous. I could see the train station in front of me, and I was actually thinking about just going to the train station, just getting the hell out of there because
really
that's
so serious.
But your luggage is still in the hotel at this point, right?
No, I'd left the hotel at this point. Yeah.
No. But
I was still in the hotel. Yeah, so I would have just left without checking out the hotel. So all my stuff was still in the hotel. But I was only just vaguely thinking about it. I obviously wasn't going to do that. But it just shows how, I just really felt the pressure more than probably I've ever felt before in my life. And maybe because I genuinely felt there was a great chance to win it. And you start to think about, it's very hard in that situation, as you guys know, not to jump ahead of yourself. When you start, it was one of the problems that competitors have is not jumping ahead of yourself and start to think, actually, I might be able to win it. So that's an issue I clearly need to solve in future. But going back to Harry Greave thing, I think one of the other reasons why he did so well is because they have a fast time control now. He's a very well-prepared player. And I feel like if you've got a good position out the opening, it's a big advantage, even bigger an advantage with such a fast time control because, 1 or 2 games where I was under pressure in the opening, certainly against Harry and against John Ems, you don't really have the time to solve those problems at the board like you might have in a longer time control. So, there's a couple of reasons there. And certainly, I think the scar tissue, if I was a betting man, which obviously I am, and there was betting on the British Championships, I probably wouldn't bet on people over 40 winning it for the first time. I'd probably be going all in on like the 20-year-olds or the 30-year-olds, if that makes sense. So,
It's tough as you get older. And look, anyway, you produce us with some games. And let's go have a look at one of your games now. Now, first
Sure.
one is against a guy called Kuravan. Where was that played?
Well, that was actually in the. So I'm just trying to find a study myself because we've sort of got the Zoom in the way at the moment. Yeah, so that was in the. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was in the British Blitz Championships qualifiers.
Would you care to take us through it?
Yeah, I'll take it. Sorry about this. I'm just trying to find the study again.
You should be
So
able to
here we go. Let's go to the study, right?
Excellent.
Right.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So essentially, this is the British Blitz qualifier. Now, the idea is to hold the British Blitz finals in December. So they had a number of qualifiers all through the. There was one in London. There was one in the southeast. There was one in the southwest. There was one in the northwest and the northeast. There was one in Scotland, and maybe there wasn't one in southeast actually, because I guess that would be London. But there's a number of qualifiers, and the idea is to have 16 players in December in Birmingham, 16 female players as well, 16 women players. And fortunately, I was one of the qualifiers. I started with something like 7 out of 7 in this tournament, but then I slowed down, and the games weren't recorded live, so I had to remember them from memory. But some of the games were vaguely interesting. So yeah, this game was against Kuravan, who's like a Ukrainian player, who's rated 2200, and he went F5, and I played Bishop G5.
What do you? I mean, you played that a lot, haven't you? What do you really rate that move against the Dutch?
Yeah, I mean, Gary Kasparov's played Bishop G5 against the Dutch. Normally, if Gary Kasparov plays an opening, you know that it's a decent opening because he doesn't tend to play bad openings. So yeah, I feel like he probably quite works reasonably well. Funny enough, I actually lost a game against Harry Grieve in 2019 Hastings Masters, but he was very well prepared against this Bishop G5. So G6 is a move. And after D5, I played the move Knight G3. So apparently this was recommended to Keith Arkle by Levon Aronian. And he suggested that he play this move Knight G3. Keith then played it against Thomas Rendell and lost. And Aronian kind of apologized for recommending this Knight G3. But I think it's quite a good move.
Aronian's got a game here against Predrag Nikolic from 2003. I can just I'll just put that one in.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
and he met C5 with Knight F3. He didn't
Only a
stick
draw,
on
though.
C5
Only a
straight
draw.
away. So he is at least practicing what he preached there. Oh, so you've got another game here. You've got there's Arkle against Rendell. We can put that one in too.
Yeah.
And I think there's a Danny Gormally game here against is there?
You know a lot more than I do. You know, you can show her how well I'm prepared for these shows, can't you?
Well, it's better to be spontaneous. It's much more entertaining, you know.
Yeah. I mean, but
no, can't find it now. Maybe
that's fine. Yeah, but yeah. So I mean, I think the Iranian game you were saying after C5, White played Knight F3. But I think taking it is actually a move, because if they take on B2, you just go Rook B1.
Yeah. Can I just go back a sec and see if we've got your game here, because
all right.
Because I thought I saw your name in these references, and now it doesn't seem to be there anymore.
I'm pretty sure.
Here we go. Prusa's.
Oh yeah, this is a game where he went Knight H6.
Yeah.
And
Northumberland Masters. So you played Knight G3 before.
That's right. And actually, I've had 2 games in this with Knight H6 is a very interesting move. So I think in this Dutch as black, it's even more important to fight for the central squares than in normal openings because you played f5, you slightly weakened the king, so you can't afford to really lose control over the center. So knight e6 looks like a weird move, but you play knight back to f7. I remember that Prusa's game because we eventually got some endgame where I probably should have held it. And then I was kind of annoyed and I stormed off after I lost. It's very rare for me. I very rarely react badly to losses, as you guys know. And and I remember him walking after me. This is like another tournament in Newcastle. He was playing at a hotel. I think it was somewhere like Northumbria Park. And he sort of like chased after me and started talking about the game. I was thinking, just go away. Please just go away. I want to be left to my own devices. But knight h6, I think there is an interesting move here, which is knight h5. And the main tactical point is if you take, white takes here. We get this variation, which is good for white because you end up regaining your pawn and actually probably winning a pawn as well. So this would be a good variation for white. So in this position, so the main reason I think black plays knight h6 is if he goes knight f6, then a move like h4 might be slightly dangerous. And if you responded with h6 trying to relieve the pressure, you might run into something like this, where white is starting to get immediate threats against kingside and got some play on the light squares, or bishop d3 would also be a move as well. So just to logically explain the ideas behind the opening. So knight h6 looks weird, but the knight actually is probably safer on h6 and is going to come back to f7, coordinate very well, and also not block the bishop on g7. So that makes a lot of sense to me, knight h6. And I think it's about equal. But yeah, c5 is a move. Now, I think after c5, you said knight f3 was fairly reasonable. So that makes a lot of sense, actually, because if black now takes on d4, the knight is coming to a very active square and bishop b5 is threatened.
Isn't he going to go queen b6?
Yeah, I mean, queen b6 would make a lot of sense, right? I mean, I don't actually play knight d4 myself, so... Can you go bishop b4?
You took on c5, didn't you? You didn't play this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand the great difference, but something like this looks playable for black, right? At
well,
least
playable. White's got two loose pieces, hasn't he?
Exactly. So I feel like my move, just taking, is probably a simpler move. I mean, I'm not really that familiar with the theory, if I'm totally honest, but it's a very dynamic position because black now gets a big center. And after this variation, bishop e2, I think at some moment he seemed to make quite a serious mistake. So knight e7 looks very logical to me, defending d5. And at this moment, white does have some choices. So I don't know what would you guys play in this position? I mean, I haven't actually checked this really with an engine very closely, or not this specific position. So I wouldn't.
Queen b3.
Queen b3 looks very logical, yeah. Just hitting d5.
Maybe queen h4, queen a4, with the idea of queen h4 if he castles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although
I'll put the boot in.
Does that actually create to use Mark Hebden's terminology? What is the threat?
It's knight f5. Oh no.
Well, black's got to play knight f5, hasn't he? Or should he?
Well, you're not really. Are you threatening to take on e7 though?
Well, I'm just thinking with hanging pawns in the middle, white doesn't mind exchanges. I'm probably going to go bishop h6 on it.
Yeah,
take out his bishop. Take out his bishop.
And go rook d1 and then
rook
a1.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, I mean, the interesting thing is here, I'm just suddenly wondering whether white can actually play even more dynamically and play the move c4.
That's an interesting move.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, one of the things I know, I watched this Vladimir Kramnik press conference for London Chess Classic a few years ago. One of the things I noticed was he was always looking out for dynamic pawn moves in the center in the opening. So positions where it looked like there was not much going on. He'd always be looking for ways to kind of change the pawn structure. So I found that kind of instructive. So I wonder if he would consider a move like c4.
Looks good. Looks good.
Yeah.
Because if you take the obvious, the obvious point is that this is going to be very strong, I would guess.
Devastating.
E4, knight d2. I mean, I was thinking about e4 CD, but you don't need to.
Also possible because this is. You're absolutely right. You don't need to. Knight e5 now is probably playable for black, not losing anyway. So, but e4, you're right. You've got a nice backup move. You don't always have to sacrifice pieces. Maybe you could even consider bishop e3 as well, because if d4, I have knight takes e4.
Yeah.
It's not the sort of problems that black wants to solve in the opening. Certainly not in the Blitz.
No.
So I wonder actually if knight e7 is maybe a mistake, and that you should put a knight on f6, and that now c4 can be met with either taking on c4 or going d4, because So, but yeah, it's all quite complicated. He went after I went h4, which probably isn't a very good move, but I wanted to go h5. Obviously, in Blitz chess, you're just playing instinctively. He played queen d6. So again, I was happy that I played the first choice of the engine. I think this is something where amateur players struggle, is to play dynamic moves, like dynamic pawn moves. So I think a lot of amateur players here would maybe play a bit more slowly, and they would play queen d2. Is that a fair assessment?
Very, very much so. It's very hard to get amateurs to move pawns in general.
I just don't think you see many amateurs playing h4, to be honest.
It wouldn't play.
Yeah, and c4 is also unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, I think c4 was the top engine move, and I think it makes a lot of sense because you're fighting for control over the centre. As I said before, in the Dutch, the centre is so important. You know, if black loses control of the centre, it's often just in trouble. So after c4, clearly he can't take because the queen would be hanging. And if he goes d4, now knight e4 is very strong. And if he goes queen e6, I have moves like this. And then knight d6, I'm threatening bishop c4, looking very bad for black. So he went h6. And this is an interesting point. I think this is one of the differences of Blitz chess as compared to classical chess, is that in classical chess, you've got more time to think about different candidate moves, But here I had no time to think because obviously it's a 3-minute game plus slight increment. So essentially my first reaction was if I go bishop e3, he can play d4 with tempo. And for some reason, I didn't really consider, I considered taking on d5, but that's the move I played. I didn't consider taking on e7. And that would have just been a very strong move, just a simple move.
He's got to take with the knight.
He's got to take with the knight, otherwise otherwise d5 is hanging. And then I take on d5. And now I'm threatening knight e4, so he's probably got to take out the queen.
It's starting to look horrible.
It's starting to look horrible. Even going for the endgame is obviously quite good for white, but apparently a move like queen c2 is very strong because now he cannot castle because then he loses queen. So really a very unpleasant position. He can play maybe queen c6, I thought was the best, but I think he's just not a very good position for black at all. He's just got a lot of weaknesses. Bishop on g7 is very inactive. So I think that's what I should have done. And there was also there's another interesting candidate move here, which is actually to go knight e4 immediately, which is not, again, a move that I didn't. So I thought it was worth showing this game just to show the difference between Blitz chess, or like when we're short of time, and classical chess, because, in classical chess, you have more time to consider and you should spend more time considering your different candidate moves. Whereas in in Blitz chess, you don't have time to see all this. So in the end, I took, and he took here, and this is where I played a bad move, actually. I took with the F rook, which turned out to be.
You took with the A rook according to the score.
Well, according to the score, but that's actually wrong. I actually took with the F rook. Sorry, yeah. I should have put the P. I should have sent the PGN slightly differently. I actually took with the F rook.
Shall we promote that? I'll just promote that variation then.
Yeah. So, but the winning variation here is when they take here and take on H4. White has only one way to win here, I think. So I don't know if you guys can.
Well, unfortunately, it's up there.
Is it already up there?
Yeah, it's C7.
Oh, okay. Yeah, C7. And very nice idea. The idea is, obviously, again, you don't have time to consider all this in the game. Even if I take with this rook, would I have played C7? Probably not. There's a very nice variation here. I think it goes something like here. Knight here. Probably bishop C4 is also possible. A knight check. So now if he comes back here, this is just carnage, bishop C4. And he's just losing lots of material. So he's got to come up the board, which is obviously the last thing you want. And I think now there's several ways to win, but I think this is actually very nice. You just take.
Mate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bishop D3 check. King E3.
Well, not actually.
Mate. Oh, it's not.
Actually,
oh no.
It's not, mate. It's not, mate. Yeah, he can actually. He can run for the hills. It's still looking bad.
An unexpected king hunt.
But I think there's a simpler way here, which you could just simply go rook F3 and bishop D3 is now like a terrible threat. So
there's no move. There's no move.
There's no move. So it's a very nice variation. I didn't see this in the game. So I ended up taking back with this rook, and he took on H4. And you play a move, which again, a blitz is a very automatic move. But I think C7 is not so effective now. The rook has moved away from F1. So these variations where you go after the black king aren't as strong. So knight E4 is probably as good as anything. And he took, and then we played a number of moves after this. And eventually I managed to win the game. But at this point in time, White has actually fallen down. But the computer says that it's objectively about equal because the black king is still not particularly safe. So that was the first game I thought I'd show.
It's got some interesting moments in it, hasn't it? Definitely. I mean,
it had some interesting moments, yeah.
The Dutch is always interesting.
The Dutch is I mean, I know a good friend of mine, although he claims he's not a good, or I'm not a good friend to him because I'm often making these jealous comments towards Simon. It's like, what was the famous saying by Gore Vidal where he said, every time one of my friends succeeds, a little part of me dies inside. I think I'm the living embodiment of that. But
this show is getting very cultural, isn't it? Far too cultural.
Yeah, very cultural. Yeah,
we better move away from that quick.
From Gore Vidal quotes to Fazekas' false teeth.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, I qualified. I lost rating, so I got 14 out of 15. Charlie Story came second with 13.5 out of 15, so he had a good performance. But I got a 24-20 performance, and funny enough, that was the only performance out of all the qualifiers. When I checked on the results, it's incredible. It's the only performance which is above 2,400. So everybody else scored like 2,300 or below, and I think that's mainly due to the fact that when you play in classical chess now, obviously you get a lot of underrated players. That's even worse in like faster time controls because you're playing against kids who probably haven't played many FIDE rated Blitz tournaments. So their ratings are massively underrated at FIDE Blitz. So very, very hard to not lose rating almost. So yeah, I lost probably a slight. I mean, it's ridiculous to get 14 out of 15 and lose rating, to be honest. But
Well, look, we're covering unknown cultural things now, but let's move away from that to a subject that's been exciting the chess world recently.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, the withdrawal of Magnus Carlsen from the Sinquefield Cup.
Yeah.
Now, this sent the chess world into a kind of tailspin with an enormous amount of social media coverage. I'm not at all sure whether it was positive for the game, but I know that you two guys have had, fairly clear views on the subject. Sure. So, I mean, I wonder if you'd like to just chat about this. We should chat about it for a little while. Well, first of all, Danny, what do you think of the whole thing?
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, me and Nigel probably have slightly different views on this, which is fair to say, but there's clearly been a few cheating scandals in the past. I mean, one very obvious example was Igor Rausis, who was like an older player.
You were one of the first people to call him, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Lawrence Trempian up a tweet about him, and he said, wow, this is kind of shocking that Igor Rausis has improved so much. What's going on? And he kind of insinuated that there was something a bit weird. Now, first, you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But when I looked at his games, they were too clean. There weren't any real mistakes down. I just thought it was very strange for a player, somebody in his 50s, to suddenly improve 200 rating points. It's very, very rare to even improve at all at that age, or just improve your rating. It's very difficult, let alone 200 points. So that was a very clear-cut example. Now, this current example, in my opinion, is far less clear, because when I watched video interviews of Niemann, he's clearly a very strong player. He got a very good memory. In my opinion, he's obviously a very good chess player. Now, there might be something weird going on with him, but he's clearly, he's a much stronger player than someone like Rausis, or even some of these guys who've been caught for cheating in the past. But it should also be pointed out, I think Alexei Shirov pointed this out, that a number of younger players have had their accounts closed online. So it's not, including Niemann, for example, he's actually had. So, whether he's been cheating over the ball, we don't really know. We like to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he's admitted himself that he's been cheating online, and actually quite a few other players have actually had their accounts closed, younger players. So I think it might be like a younger thing, that when you're younger, you try different things, and unfortunately it seems like computer cheating is one of them.
Yeah. But I mean, would that necessarily make Magnus Carlsen withdraw from a tournament? No,
and I think I would actually state that, Magnus, I mean, it's very easy to attack Magnus and say, look, Magnus this, Magnus that. But Magnus Carlsen's done a lot for chess, because he's raised the profile of chess as a charismatic world champion would do. He's brought a lot of money into chess, so I think we have to give Magnus the benefit of the doubt, because effectively he's never withdrawn from a tournament before. So as soon as he withdrawn, I was absolutely shocked. I thought, this is very, very strange development. It doesn't make any sense. Why would he withdraw? When I watched the video of him playing against Niemann, he looked absolutely furious at the end of the game. Now, was that because Niemann is a bit of a combative character and makes these comments that could be considered slightly incendiary? Or is it because Magnus feels that this kid is not completely on the level? When I looked at that game, at first, before all this stuff came out, when I was following the game, I did think it was a slightly strange game. Because at some point, I know they were talking a lot about the opening and whether or not Hans Niemann understood Carlsen's preparation and anticipated his preparation. But the strange thing about it was the ending, because at some moment, Niemann played, so Magnus played his rook to d1. So it's a bog standard Magnus ending, which he's won a million times, where he's probably slightly worse going into it, or it's equal, And then he always grinds the other guy down, however strong the opponent is, it doesn't seem to matter. He always seems to win those kind of positions. But in this position, after he went rook d1, I think 99% of GMs there would take on d1 without hesitation. And they'd say, look, let's make a draw. I can make a draw here against Magnus probably. I take on d1, go bishop d5. I'm probably going to be able to hold this. But what was either impressive or slightly strange was that, in fact, Niemann played rook c8. So he's actually refusing to exchange rooks. And probably, a lot of players would think they're putting themselves in a more dangerous position against Magnus by keeping the pieces on, making the game more complex. But he's basically, why is he doing that? Is he doing that because he's just a very super confident individual? Or is he doing that because he has some information that we're not aware of? And obviously, we don't know. I mean, the whole thing about cheating, Andy, is, unless you actually catch the guy in the act, you're not going to be able to prove anything. The only reason why Rousers was caught is because people went to the extreme lengths of photographing him while he was in the toilet. Otherwise, he'd probably still be playing now. Now, unless somebody actually catches, if Niemann is cheating, and we're not saying that he is, unless somebody actually catches Niemann in the act, Magnus might think, I think I'm suspicious of this guy. And let's face it, Magnus probably has a better understanding of computer chess, chess computers, chess engines than anyone in history, right? So if he thinks that this guy is slightly suspect, I think there is some validity in that. So he obviously thinks he's slightly suspect at the board, not just, online or whatever. So, but if he thinks he's cheating, I don't think he knows. I don't think he can prove it. He can't prove it because he's either got some kind of device.
The point is surely that he withdrew from the tournament and then he put up that tweet.
Yeah.
With Mourinho there. And the clear insinuation was that something odd is happening.
Yeah, and people say that it was...
The problem is, of course, that Niemann was then subjected to trial by social media.
Yeah. This is
he was absolutely hammered. He was absolutely hammered. But people who didn't really have proof, and this is where Nigel comes in, really, because I think you were kind of suggesting that this was completely wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was no actual accusation of cheating, but it was the implication was there that something odd was going on, and then it snowballed, and then there was no clarification coming out. So it was sort of a kind of a backdoor accusation of cheating somehow, and I just felt it was it completely contravened the principle that you've got to give people the benefit of the doubt, innocent until proven guilty, and this is actually in FIDE statutes as well. So the correct thing to do if you're ever in that situation is apparently you go to the arbiter, voice your suspicions quietly. You don't withdraw from the tournament, and you certainly don't tweet. Right, and that's the way that you've got to handle it.
But I think people just act differently now. As far as actually being offended by, you could take two sides of the argument. You could say, like, the player himself. I don't think someone like Hans Niemann is someone who is easily offended. But you're right, it's a kind of a form of public shaming. And, having been subject to something like this before, when I obviously didn't act very well at an Olympiad, I can testify it's not a very pleasant place to be in when you've got this huge media storm, especially if you're trying to play in a tournament. You could take it.
Probably worse now than when you actually experience it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, far, huge media storm over this whole Hans Niemann controversy. So I would say, I've had times in the past when I've played people online and they've accused me of cheating. Now, you could say, well, that's a compliment. That they're saying, you play like an engine, you're so good that you play like an engine. But on the other hand, if this is a known player, it's almost like an insult from Magnus. It's like saying, well, you're actually not strong enough to play like this. I don't think you're good enough to beat me without using an engine, Hans. So that's the only way you can beat me. So effectively, this is what he's saying. He's saying that Hans Niemann is not a strong enough player to beat me. But of course, we're so. I mean, you guys aren't, but I'm kind of reading I don't know for a fact this is what he's implying when he's posting this tweet.
That's why we needed the clarification. I mean,
Yes.
and I mean, things need to be done in a sort of, to avoid this kind of mess, because I don't think it's good publicity at all for chess. You
talk about publicity, but the fact is that there's a tournament coming up, right? It's more or less immediate after the Sinquefield Cup. And blow me down if Niemann and Carlsen are not playing in the same tournament, after the withdrawal.
Well, it's all about the money. We were saying this earlier. It's all about the money. It's all about the money, Andy. It's like, there's things that seem to be more important than the ethics, which is actually getting the money. Now, if Carlsen is genuinely suspicious of Hans Niemann, he should say, look, I don't want to compete in any. He should make a statement and say, look, I'm suspicious of this guy Niemann. I don't want to compete in any tournaments with this guy where this guy's present. I think he's been cheating. I think you're absolutely right. He needs to come out and say something.
That can get him banned by FIDE as soon as, and the question in my mind is whether or not he was already implying that Niemann was cheating with the withdrawal and the sort of strange tweet. So if you actually come out and say that somebody is cheating, then that's a FIDE ban, right? But and there's the Stolizenkin case.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So it's very it's very tricky. But I mean, you don't tweet and you don't withdraw, right?
Yeah, Those yeah. Well, my theory.
The point is, if you do tweet, now it could mean anything. Let's assume Carlsen is tweeting, I don't know, not accusing Hans of cheating. Yet, the entire chess community then leaps onto the whole subject and starts hammering Niemann, accusing him of cheating and doing all this, doing that. It must have a terrible psychological effect on somebody. It's in effect a kind of bullying, isn't it?
It is, but
it's using your power to destroy somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, my theory with this is I think that Magnus withdrew because he believes that Niemann, there's something strange going on with Niemann. But the problem is he doesn't know how to prove it. So this is why he hasn't come out and made a statement. What can he actually say? If he says, well, look, I think Niemann is cheating, he can't actually prove it. So you're absolutely right, he's going to get banned. So his only recourse here is actually not to say anything at all and just let the whole thing play out. I think that was what he wanted to do. He was very annoyed after losing to Niemann. I think he thinks that he is dodgy. So his whole idea, his whole plan, which seems to have come off, which was to create this kind of pressure against Niemann and kind of expose him in some way and kind of, if he genuinely believes that he's cheating, his plan has worked. He put all the limelight on Niemann. So effectively, everybody's looking at Niemann now. Every time he plays a tournament, there's going to be a huge amount of, intense investigation into Niemann's every move. So, and we already saw that in the Sinquefield Cup. As soon as Magnus withdrew, Niemann didn't do very well. So was that because they
after that? I don't know.
Was that because they implemented a delay? Was that because they implemented the delay? So he couldn't somehow communicate with somebody
the media storm around it. Who's going to play well when all that's going on? It's very unsatisfactory. I mean, what I think what Carlsen could have done is just insisted that there was a broadcast delay in right from the start in any future tournaments he plays in. Right, if he feels so strongly about it, then 15 or 30-minute broadcast delay, would certainly stop the presumed method of getting engine assistance or whatever. Don't know how the moves would then be transmitted to him. Because they are checking players for electronic devices. That's just standard now. Where is the device? If he's where is the receiver? And
that's it.
Sorry.
No, I totally agree. I mean, if he's got a receiver, but I think the point I would make is Magnus. It's also worth pointing out he's never withdrawn for a tournament before. So I think you give him some credit. He's never actually withdrawn for a tournament. So you say, he shouldn't withdraw, but I know myself, I've withdrawn for a number of tournaments before. I think it's wrong. It's actually a mistake to withdraw from any tournament. all I would say is Magnus has never withdrawn from a tournament before. So he does have some kind of cachet that he's built up over the years, some kind of respect that I think is due to him for that. So the fact that he's come out and like withdrawn, to me, does, if I'm speaking from a personal, honest point of view, does kind of make me think there's something slightly suspect about this. But what I don't really agree with is, as you say, everybody jumping on the bandwagon. So I've kind of, I made a few, I slung a bit of mud on social media, as I do. And I've kind of come back from that and said, look, there's no point getting involved. Let this thing play out.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, successful streamers we probably won't mention, have effectively boosted their profiles by jumping on the whole bandwagon with Hans. And, I think if there's even a tiny suspicion that he's, like, there must be at least a tiny suspicion in their mind that he is on the level. So if there's even a 1% chance he's on the level, they shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You've got to be absolutely certain that this person's cheating, because if he's not cheating, you're effectively damaging his reputation. You're leaving yourself open to lawsuits and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, the fact is that the organisers of the Sinkfield Cup have absolved Niemann of any suggestion that he was cheating. And they said the tournament was clean, didn't they? Is that correct?
Yeah. They said they found absolutely nothing.
Yeah, okay. So, you've got to assume that is absolutely 100% correct, because, it's one of the foremost tournaments on the circuit, if not the foremost, the top tournament, and they've declared the whole thing clean. Yeah,
but you say that, but I mean, who's it run by? It's run by people who aren't, they're not as strong as Magnus. They don't understand, chess on the level that Magnus does. It could be that their technology is behind the cheaters. We've seen this in other sports where dopers are ahead of the curve, and people say, "Oh, this guy's innocent." Lance Armstrong was innocent for years. He actually sued people who dared to
Are we really saying that the level? If somebody wants to cheat, the technology is available now so that they can't be discovered. Are we really saying that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I just feel that game against Magnus, to me, was a little bit suspect. But I don't know for certain. But I just feel that I think we'll all I can say is we'll know more in future. The probability is that Hans Niemann, in 4 or 5 years' time, will be an established member of the elite.
Yeah.
He does seem like an interesting player. It's certainly in interviews, he's a very interesting guy to interview. He talks a lot about subjects that interest me, like when he talks about risk aversion and how players like Wesley So are very hard to beat because they're very good at avoiding losing and avoiding making mistakes. So I think he's a very interesting interview, very interesting player. He's obviously got very good memory as well. He can remember games. So I think, that's the most likely scenario. But I think part of the reason why someone like Rouse was able to get away with it for so long was because people were afraid to say anything, and people were actually like, let's just check this guy. Let's actually just stop this guy in his tracks. And there's been occasions in the past when I've played games and I think, actually, this guy's a bit suspicious. But, what can you say? Who can you talk to? It's not just about...
You're allowed to voice suspicions to the arbiter quietly.
Yeah, but in my opinion, Nigel, a lot of these arbiters, they don't really listen, or they don't really do enough, or they haven't really got the ability to,
You need good arbiters. I mean, there are some very good arbiters around, and so.
But I know there's been a number of players, and probably still getting away with it, who've cheated. Even in English chess.
Okay, we could go around in circles on this, but the fact.
But we don't really want to make exactly. But I think the whole Hans Niemann thing will play out, and it'll obviously die down, this whole controversy. If he is cheating, then we will see more stuff come out. But the probability is he isn't cheating, then the whole thing will just die a death. And in a few years' time, he'll still be playing in top tournaments and. We'll have moved on to talk. But I think it's an interesting thing. I think in a few years' time, the technology will get to the point where you won't really be able to cheat. I think at this point, it's kind of like on the borderline. but it will probably get to the point where you won't be able to cheat full stop. So therefore, the holes, you know, I think it's something interesting to talk about, which we probably won't have in the future. So, you know, that's my take on it.
Well, very interesting. It is extraordinary the way the chess world just moves on from one. I mean, in the past, you know, 20, 30 years ago, strong chess events were sort of spaced out. So you had the opportunity to reflect on one that just or was taking place or just finished. Yeah. Look at the games, think about it. But now there's so many chess tournaments going on that it's almost as if they step straight into another one, and then the blanket coverage of online continues, and you kind of get overwhelmed with it. There's just so much chess.
There's too much chess. The's too much chess.
I agree, but the fact that Carlsen and Niemann are playing in the same tournament, you know, a few days after all this brouhaha is just incredible to me. And it will be interesting to see what happens if Carlsen does play Niemann in this tournament.
I'm sure he will. Yeah, I'm sure he will. Yeah, I'm sure they'll arrange that if nothing else. So,
Shall we look at another game?
Yeah, let's move on to the next game. Yeah.
All right. So a game against Marcus Harvey, is it?
Yeah. I mean, this game was played in Northumbria Masters. So I started with 3 out of 3. I often start well in tournaments. Then ran into Brandon Clark. Was actually so that's a game we're going to look at after this game. I drew that game, and then I then drew against the 2100 where I was actually in trouble at one point, and I kind of wisely or maybe not wisely repeated when I could possibly have played on, but he had 3 pawns for the piece on the queen, so I was looking quite scary. So now I played Marcus Harvey. He's an interesting player. Marcus is very sort of confident guy. He's a very good blitz player. He's actually got a full-time job, so he doesn't have much time. He told me that he didn't play the British because he couldn't get enough holiday time. So I played Marcus, and he played B6 on move 2. So this is kind of, you know, well, the problem was this was like the afternoon game. So as you guys are aware, you know, most tournaments now or it seems like most tournaments now are not one game a day. You know, they're generally 2 games a day, and I found this tournament very tiring. And certainly in this game, at certain points, I was very, very tired in this game. But so I decided to play Bishop G5, which is a very solid move. And it's kind of like a Torre attack.
If he plays Bishop B7, would you have taken the knight?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I think that was the question.
I'm sure that's what a club player would ask.
Yeah, because why do you go Bishop G5 if you're not going to take the knight?
I've taken the knight in that position. It was a long time ago. But
will they take over the G pawn, do they, or what?
I think it looks most logical, so you can put the rook on G8, but I'm not sure. I guess they take with a G pawn. That looks like the most logical continuation to me.
Yeah.
So how did you follow this up, Nigel? How did you play?
I think I played it against in one game against Yehuda Grunfeld, but I played it in an earlier game as well, like probably like the early 1980s, you know. And now I would possibly be inclined to play G3 and Bishop G2,
or even allowing the potential capture on F3. You're not worried about. Yeah. You're not worried about this.
No.
That's interesting, because I'd be slightly concerned. Is there some kind of possibility that Black would just...
Yeah, he might play F5, I suppose. Well, in that case, what I'll do, maybe I'll play knight BD2 before G3.
Yeah.
And then G3.
Could Black play a move like E5, or is that completely bonkers? Or maybe C5 and just try and play... I mean, I feel like if you've got the 2 bishops, you should try and sharpen it up.
Well, I sort of changed my mind. I think I lost the game against Grunfeld, and I kind of changed my mind about the whole position.
Is this the same Broomfield who created a Broomfield opening, or was it different?
No. That was that. You know, he was long gone. Yehuda Grunfeld.
Because we were having a discussion actually during the tournament, and I was chatting to Mark Hebden, and the same people who stay in the same hotel as me, Mark Hebden, Angus Dunnington. So Angus is kind of like a blast from the past who ended up playing a lot of poker. And I said to them, we were talking about where Tromposki was from.
Brazil,
where would you guess that Tromposki is from?
Brazil,
wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I said Mexico, and they were like astounded that I was so close because they didn't have a clue. They thought he was from somewhere in Europe, right? But
No,
yeah,
I
it's
think he's
interesting. You both
Brazilian.
know that he's from Brazil.
Carlos Torre was Mexican, I think.
That's right. That's probably what I got confused with. Yeah, so it's Carlos Torre who created the Torre attack, I think.
Yeah. Well, South America, they just love to play Bishop G5.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay, I didn't realise. Yeah.
Well, lucky for you, he didn't put you to the test. He played 94.
Yeah, I mean, you can. Yeah, exactly. You can just go knight BD2, I guess, if they go.
Yeah.
Anyway, because at some point they're probably going to go like E6. So he went knight E4. Now, Mark Hebden, who's a bit of an expert in these kind of positions, said that Bishop F4 was a good move. And the idea is to just go knight BD2, take on E4. So, for example, if they go here, he said that a good continuation for white is this move. Now, you can't really pin the knight with Bishop B4 because of the move C3 would end up winning a piece. So you've got to go back with the bishop. And now I can take the center with E4. It's kind of similar to what happened in the game because I went Bishop H4 and he played slightly unusual kind of setup, G6, which is a double fianchetto. So I just continued with knight D2, he took, and I went C3 and I went E4. And at this point in the game, I felt very happy. You know, I thought I've got the center. I've got some slight pressure on the black position. My position is very solid. This is exactly the sort of position you want as white in like the second game in a 2-round day where you just want to be solid. You know, I'm playing against quite a dangerous player, sort of quite a tactical player. So I just want a solid kind of game where I don't have to think much. That was my philosophy in the game. It kind of worked for a long period until a disaster at the end.
Definitely looks better for white. Look at that. Leading development.
Yeah. I mean, he played all this C6. I was kind of surprised that he went C6, and I thought it didn't really make a lot of sense to go C6 and B5 here, given that he's already played B6. But I think he just wanted a kind of setup that he was familiar with. And you can kind of get these kind of positions in something like the modern, you know, similar to modern. So at this point in the game, I decided to play this move F4 because I thought, you know, I've put my bishop on B3. I've castled my rooks on F1. My bishop's on H4. The only move that makes complete sense here is the move F4.
Yeah.
So I could play more positional moves like A4, you know, just maybe, you know, or something, maybe Queen E2. But I thought F4, even though it's obviously like, it's like, you know, maybe a slightly risky move as well. It just feels like a very natural move, right?
Yeah.
So he went Bishop F6, which is also possibly not best.
Wow.
Yeah, that was maybe a slight mistake by him. So in this moment, I could have played the move Queen to E1. It was interesting that Mark Hebden suggested the move Queen E1 here. And funny enough, the next day, I chatted to Alexander Chernayev, who was playing in my tournament as well. And he said, Danny, why you not play? One question. Why you not go Queen E1? Why you not go Queen E1? After Bishop F6, why you not go Queen E1?
That's already 3 questions.
Yeah.
But it's the same question.
And he also said it in a Chernayev accent.
Yeah.
So,
well, he'd have to.
Yeah. Well, he could have been putting on an accent himself. But But yeah, I think Queen E1 is as kind of a move of a natural attacking player. Yeah, and so you see that you know, in kind of the Grand Prix attack and.
Well, does Black play E5 then?
Yeah, that was the reason why I probably was a little bit unsure about that move. But apparently, this still is better for White. So I guess you take.
Yeah.
And now you can't take out the Queen because this would be very strong because you're hitting the. So Black doesn't have time to recapture because the Rook is hitting the Queen. So you'd have to take out the Knight. Yeah, this is what I wasn't sure about. I thought, well, if I take, he's going to bring the Knight to G4. But I guess the computer says that this is good for White, so it probably is. Yeah, I guess you just take twice, right? Or maybe I don't know.
Well, I would be a bit skeptical about this as well.
Yeah, it feels like Black is getting a little bit of development.
Yeah. You know, and you know, if White doesn't have something concrete that's good, you'd think that Black will get counterplay. Maybe he goes ED or something. You know, so I would, you know, that is why I would be concerned about Queen E1.
Well, I mean, you could take on a E5 with the D pawn and go F5, and let him check and go Knight G4 because Rook F3 just stops that. And then that
is very, very possible. So just
claim an attack.
Yeah.
I mean,
you must have some pressure here. You've got to have some pressure, surely.
I'm sure. I mean, it's kind of similar to what I did in the game because I ended up playing F5 anyway. I'm also wondering if, I mean, there's probably quite a few because I'm also wondering if something like this is also better for White because it feels like I've got the centre. Maybe the Rook is coming to C1, put pressure. So the question is whether you go for like active play or whether you could just play it positionally. That's always the problem sometimes in these positions, as we'll see later on as well. Whether you should just go for like more positional type of play, or whether you should just go straight away for the hack. I mean, I could also crudely take on E5 because that is threatening to win a piece. So when he goes Knight G4, and now go Knight F3. So now I'm threatening Queen G3. But I guess I would be concerned about something like this, but maybe this is just good for White, I mean, objectively speaking.
Knight looks a little bit...
marooned, right? But I agree, it's not... I mean, over the board, it's very easy to sit there with an engine, and the engine says, well, this is winning, this is winning.
Yeah.
But over the board, I completely agree with Nigel. You're not completely certain. So I played a move which I thought was fairly safe, which was Bishop G3. And certainly, I mean, I could also have taken on F6 as well. But certainly Bishop G3 I was fairly happy with. And I think here he had to play something other than what he played. I think maybe he had to try C5. I think Knight B6 is maybe too slow. Because now after F5, I think Black's already in trouble.
Yeah. Looks really nice for you.
It looks very pleasant. So he went King H8, and I took here. And this was quite an important moment. I think here I kind of made a slight misjudgment. And I could have played a move like, I don't know, what move would you guys play here?
Well, just Queen E2, build up.
Yeah, it's interesting that Mark Hebden said that Queen E2 was the move that he would have played. And
I mean, it corresponds to Hebden's style. He's got an edge and he just preserves the edge and maybe makes it slightly larger.
Can you play
Yes, exactly.
Because Black hasn't equalised yet, so the pressure's still on him to equalise, isn't it?
Oh, you did play Knight F3. Knight F3 might have been my choice.
Yeah, I mean, Knight
Bishop
F3.
G4. Bishop G4, doesn't it?
Well,
exchange a pair of pieces. That must help Black here.
Well, you get the bishops then with White. So Knight F3, Bishop G4, a Queen move. I mean, I would be inclined to play it the way you did. To be honest.
Yeah, well, I think both ways are very feasible, but I think from a practical point of view, I would probably, if I had this position again, I would probably go Queen E2 because I think that the whole point is the bishop. What Hebden was saying is the bishop on C8 has really got no point now.
Right.
And white is just building up.
Well, I mean, you can try A5 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you can play A5, but then you just go A3, and effectively, black has made no progress. And if you start to play moves like this, then moves like E5 are looking a lot more dangerous. Or even simply Rook F2 and bring the other Rook to F1.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah.
Presumably E5 is bad here, so black Queen E2, black can't play E5.
Well, this is the whole point. So when you're calculating variations, you're looking at moves. Obviously, I looked at Queen E2, and when I was thinking, and you find ways to dismiss these moves, but often, you know, this is the art form really. You're dismissing these moves based on erroneous judgments. So when I looked at this, I thought, well, okay, what happens if he goes E5 now? Because it shut down my idea of E5, and now he's creating counterplay against the centre. So that was a reason, and I should have spent more time here because there's actually a winning continuation for white, which is quite a nice.
Rook takes F6 somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, just Rook takes F6 is crushing, because if he takes with the Queen, which looks like the most logical, you simply, very, very simple way to win, which is to put
Rook F1, right?
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, so Queen E2, but I completely agree with Nigel. I think Knight F3, I was very happy with it. I just felt like this position, after Bishop G4 and the exchange of the light square bishops, must be winning for white, because I've got the two bishops. His king is a lot more insecure than me. But funny enough, I ended up not winning the two bishops. So I probably should have been consistent here. And from a practical point of view, I just gone H3. Now, there is quite a nice variation that could occur. I think it's something weird like this. And funny enough, after E5, I think I saw this far. And again, I misevaluate this position when he goes E5. And apparently something like Queen E2 is quite strong anyway. So if he takes, I have moves like E5, he can't really contain my play. So he's got to play a move like Queen E7. So I think I saw this far and I thought, well, you know, this doesn't look that great. But now apparently I think you just do something weird like you take. And there's even some move like C4. He's very, very strong. Maybe not here. I know there's a C4 move at some point, which is...
Surely he would take the bishop on E5, wouldn't
he? It might be...
pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn by black.
If I check the engine evaluation, maybe it's something like this. Yeah, exactly. You would take back the bishop, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's C4 here.
No, you've taken with the pawn again.
No, it doesn't quite work in this particular position. But I know there was some weird lines it was giving, you know, so yeah, I mean, at first you think from a logical perspective, he's going to take on E5 back with a bishop, and this is good for black, or a good development for black. But it's funny how the computer just moves around and just slowly shows that you don't need to play that quickly, and eventually black will crumble. So I found that quite instructive, but I played a move which I felt was logical, which is Queen D3. I'm escaping from the pin, so I don't even have to waste a move on H3. If he wants to take an F3, I can take out a rook and bring the other rook to F1 very quickly. So I'm threatening E5. But he played a solid move. He went Queen D7. And I went E5. So yeah, now he can keep the bishops on. But I took here. Yeah, and I think this is maybe a key moment of the game. So there's a move here which there's only one way now, because I've made some slight inaccuracies. I think before there were several ways to get a winning position. Now there's only one move which apparently leads to a winning position.
Is it Rook A1? No.
Yeah, Rook A1 is very strong. So I saw this in the game. And again, I thought, you know, it's funny actually, it doesn't look winning anymore. It doesn't look like it's a winning position. But after a move like, so if he takes on A2, so I mean, again, my calculation was based around, well, maybe he could take. I didn't really want to, but this just really is horrible for black, because all my pieces are going to flood in once I gain control over
you get the E5 square now, so your knight suddenly becomes a beast.
Exactly. So I think I probably was expecting Queen D5, but Queen D5, yeah, apparently there's like several ways to get a huge advantage here. I think one way is just simply to double rooks and go rook E2 and bring the other rook to E1 and then eventually go rook E7. It's interesting here that the computer evaluates the position as winning for white. And I think it's based on two factors. Firstly, that I've got more play in the center. And secondly, is king's safety. His king is actually quite bad on H8. And, you know, I've got all these ways of improving my position. Black doesn't really have good ways to improve his position. He can never really take on A2 because D6 is weak. If he tries to play rook D8 first, he's just wasting a move. And there's another way of opening that position, which is to go H4. And then maybe continue with knight G5 in some moment and then bring the knight into E6. So it's interesting that I should have just built up with just rook E1. So this is really the moment where I lost my advantage completely. And I played this move, knight G5, probably feeling that the game would head to a draw now. So he played C5.
He's incredibly resourceful, isn't he, Marcus Harvey?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he's a very, as I said, very confident. I think that's one of the things that younger players often have is that kind of self-confidence. You've got to have, people say, oh, you know, this player's arrogant, blah, blah, blah. But you've got to have that kind of cockiness and self-belief. And, you know, to be a good player. That's probably something that I've often lacked is just that kind of like self-belief and just, you know, level of confidence. But here I proceeded to fall apart completely. So my original intention here was to, so I took here. So when he took on D4, my original intention was to take on B5. But then I started thinking, well, what happens if he takes? I even reached out my hand. I remember at the board, I reached out my hand to sort of go to knight and then play knight B5. And I thought, well, what happens if he plays this and takes on A2? And I thought, well, yeah, he's going to get the A pawn, isn't he? If I take on D4, he's going to take on B2, and he's going to get this A pawn. I wasn't completely sure about this position, but at the same time, I probably felt like it was better for white. But I thought, you know, why give him a chance? Because I kind of like mentally, I'd resigned myself to a draw by this point. So I kind of felt like, yeah, maybe I lost my nerve. Maybe I should have just said, look, you know, let's just continue fighting this game. If he goes for this kind of possibility, which he can do, the computer says that, I think the computer says that white is winning here, or white is close to winning. So I don't think he would have gone for this. But I was kind of like, I don't even want to give him the possibility of this. I'm just going to, you know, mentally in my mind, I'd shut down the game. I'm going to make a draw, right? So I'm not even going to allow him to take on A2. So instead, I made a terrible blunder. So I took on F8. And this is where I made this terrible blunder. Yeah. Because I'd found to so what I should do, I mean, any move basically draws. I mean, Queen B5 is a draw, for example. So Queen B5 is a draw. And if he takes on C3, just simply take back. And even taking on D4 would be enough for a draw, I would imagine. Or moving the king. Instead, I played this move. As soon as I played it, I was, oh my God, what have I just done? I suddenly realized that this doesn't work for white because he took on C3 and I was in absolute shock because I realized if I take on D5, he takes on B2 and it's dead lost.
How weird.
Yeah. So I resigned the game.
Hang on a minute. Just a sec. Is that dead lost? Queen E5? Oh, pawn takes rook equals queen. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, you can always, if I try and defend, move the queen, he's always just going to take on A1, wherever I move the queen. If I move the rook, he's going to take on D5.
Horrible.
And yeah, you can't even fight on here because I can't eliminate the B2 pawn. So it's kind of a sad end to a game that I should have at least made a draw in. And it's interesting actually because I've read this Michael Adams book, sorry. And I don't know if you guys have seen this book.
No.
It's called, you know, something like How to Play Like a Super GM.
Yeah.
And in the book, they talk about how you identify one or two candidate moves. So when you're calculating variations or what next move you're going to play, you calculate one or two candidate moves, and then you try to falsify the move. So you look at the move and you say, right, is there something wrong with this move? Is there something wrong with this line? And that's how you eliminate variations. So if you eliminate that variation, you know, a lot of calculations, process elimination, you then move on. And that way as well, you can avoid these terrible blunders. So what I was trying to do at the British Championships and at the Northumbrian Masters was falsify these variations. But ironically, the problem is you have to keep doing it. And clearly there were teething problems because I clearly didn't falsify knight takes b5 in that specific position. Because if I had done, I would have clearly had enough time to see that taking on b2 in this position was winning for black. So I didn't falsify my variation. So yeah, that was a bit of a sad loss.
Well, time's marching on, and I don't think we're going to get to a third game. But what we can do is to ask Danny what his plans are for the future, because you know, chess life goes on. What's your schedule?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I mean, I've got a course coming up on Thursday locally. So there is a college in Northumberland that I've actually been on a course before in Northumberland College a few years ago. But the problem was to actually get there is quite difficult because a lot of the courses take part in the evening. So you could get a bus down there. So this is in Ashington College, and so Northumberland College, which is in Ashington. Sorry.
What are you studying?
So I was studying counselling, but I thought that it probably is a mistake because I'd imagine the people counselled by me would probably need extra counselling after the. You know? So you need like 2 counsellors. You need like I'll be like the first counsellor. But yeah, I mean. I was chatting to actually the reason I started on that course was because I was chatting to a friend of mine who I used to coach, a guy called Richard Simmons, who sadly passed away quite recently. He was only like in his early 60s, I think. And I said to him, look, you know, I'm struggling. He lived in New Bigham, which is actually quite near Ashington. And he said, I'm kind of struggling. You know, I live in Alnwick. And I don't really know many people in that area. He said, well, why don't you go on a course? So you sort of join a course because then you can learn a skill and you can also meet people. So that's why I ended up on that course. But I didn't really enjoy the whole counselling thing because I found it was more regimented. You had to act in a certain way. It was very, very clearly defined. I mean, that's the problem. I moan a lot about being a chess player. But, you know, there's always problems with other careers and other activities, and there's always downsides to anything you do, really. So yeah, I mean, as chess players we kind of have it good, but I think the problem that I have with chess is there aren't enough tournaments. You know, I've not got a tournament now until probably December. You know, probably Hastings will be my next tournament if I play in Hastings. And, you know, I want to play a chess tournament now, you know, and I don't want to have to wait around until December to play a chess tournament. So I could go into Europe and play potentially, but it's very expensive. So there's not enough chess tournaments. The tournaments that there are, you know, very poor prize money, very difficult to make money from playing chess tournaments now. So I think, you know, this is a problem. And I'm not really one of these guys who does a huge amount of coaching. But maybe that's something I'm going to have to get into more seriously. You know, certainly video courses as well. I mean, I did a video course for Chessable recently, but unfortunately, the Chessable, I think Chessable are now a little bit oversaturated, so it's actually more difficult than it was. I think I had this idea that I was just going to make a lot of money from my Chessable courses, and that has now kind of died on the vine, unfortunately. So
every new course will tend to cannibalize the backlist. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's happened with a number of video producers. You know, if you keep producing more and more videos, then you know your backlist starts to not do so well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, because you're oversaturated. You're kind of overexposed. That's a very good point, because I know there are a lot of content producers that do a lot of videos, and I know that I mean, ChessBase used to do videos. I know Andy's done a lot of videos for ChessBase. I know you have as well, Nigel.
Yeah. Still making them, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they were a good source of income as well, I think. But Chessable certainly paid very well. I mean, they paid something like I think 50% to begin with, and that went down to 40%. But yeah, I mean, the other question is your passion doing it? I must admit, playing recently in these tournaments, I didn't particularly enjoy the whole experience of playing in chess tournaments. You know, I said before, I was very, very nervous in that game. Do you really want to put yourself through that? But at the same time, you need something to substitute it for. So yeah, I'm currently looking for or thinking about ways in which possibly I can have like a backup career, or that I'm not completely chained to the chess and there's other options available to me, because I think you have to be.
This has to be exactly the right way to go, Danny. I think.
Yeah,
it's so difficult to make a living from chess.
You know, I mean, you know, you do a psychology degree or something. There's,
yeah,
I mean,
that's a good point.
You know, you get, I think you get funded for that, and you know, it would take you like 5 years or 6 years to qualify as some kind of psychologist. But you know, it might suit you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I found on the counselling course, though, I didn't really enjoy the study bit, the homework stuff, and I suppose that's the thing about chess, is that a lot of it is just you get out, you play, you know, it's very kind of right there in front of you almost, and I can see why that's tempting.
You still do the homework when you prepare. You know,
yeah, but I feel like at my level, the preparation isn't as important, or it doesn't feel as important. It's still important, but you can probably get away with playing at a decent level without having to do much preparation. But yeah, if you want to go up to the highest level, I mean, the amount of preparation that they do is on a different level. So yeah, there is a kind of a lazy. I mean, I think that's the thing with the chess world, or the level that I operate at in terms of the playing level, is a lot of it revolves around the social world. So when we played in Torquay, you know, we were going to the pub after the game a lot of the time, and probably I didn't really drink that much, but probably a lot of people who did well were generally staying away from that kind of environment. So yeah, there's a kind of a trade-off. Do you want to be like an absolute top player? Well, then you probably stay away from temptations. But if you just want to be a good player and you trundle on, but you get good results, but you enjoy yourself at the same time, then yeah. So yeah, there's a kind of a choice there, really.
Well, look, good luck with I mean, it's been a long show, hour and a half already.
Yes, sorry.
Good luck with the counselling course. I mean, I think you're doing exactly the right thing.
Well, I'm not going to be doing the counselling course, but I'll probably be doing some kind of course. Yeah.
Right.
Well, to give you some extra options, there's got to be the right way.
Exactly.
You can at least have a choice and not feel you're being pressurised into just choosing.
Yeah.
Well, look, all I want to say is thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, it's a real pleasure. It's always
we'll be asking you back.
Yeah. Especially if any controversies arise, you know, you want any more hands, like a hands follow-up. Ban hands. Hashtag
I was kind of hoping we were going to avoid that one, actually, but but Andrew decided to push ahead.
Yeah, it's like the Titanic. It's like but I think everybody else has been covering it, so I don't think you'll be receiving any lawsuits unless he wants to sue every YouTube video that goes on.
Did we really say anything too controversial? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
No.
Well, thank you guys, and I hope you have a great day.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
cheers.
thanks
Bye.
again.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.